We're pleased that State Attorney General Alan Wilson is here now to talk about what is at stake. You actually had an opportunity to sit in. The rundown of what you learned while you were there.
I felt like an insect on the wall of history. We got in Sunday night, and this historic Supreme Court case began Monday morning. We were in there at 10 a.m. on Monday to hear the Anti-Injunction Act arguments. Tuesday for the individual mandate, and yesterday we had two arguments. One was the severability argument, and then last was the Medicaid expansion. I can tell you it was probably one of the most amazing experiences of my life to sit in a Supreme Court case that will profoundly impact this country one way or the other for generations to come.
That's what I was going to say, is that because cameras aren't allowed in the courtroom, so few people actually get to see the process and what it's like and what goes on. Before we start talking about the bill in general, tell me what it's like, how the process goes.
Well, first off, when we got there, the security was very tight. I mean,
Sure.
there were thousands of people around the Supreme Court. There were hundreds inside the chamber. I was sitting there with some of the other attorneys general from around the country who were the plaintiffs, along with members of the NFIB, and we were able to sit there and observe firsthand the arguments. The first argument was dealing with the Anti-Injunction Act, which basically says until someone pays a tax, they don't have a standing to challenge it. I think one of the concerns of the court, and all members of the court of both wings seem to have concerns with that, meaning you have to break the law before you'd even be able to challenge it. So I don't think that that will be a bar to the court hearing the other arguments. The second argument, and probably the most famous of them, was the individual mandate, which is basically the mandate that says everybody in the next few years are going to be required by the government to buy health insurance, to enter into a contract for health insurance. Otherwise, they will be penalized. The government made the argument that they did this under their taxing power. 2 years ago when they passed it, they actually did not use their taxing power. They said it wasn't a tax, it was a penalty, because that would have been politically unpopular to tax. They did it under the commerce power. Our argument from the state's vantage point was never before in the history of the United States has the Congress compelled people to enter into the stream of commerce, to buy something for the sole purpose of then regulating them. And that was our whole argument about individual mandate. And, of course, the government made the argument that everyone eventually enters into the healthcare market. And because that's a unique market, we have to be able to regulate it to keep costs down. The problem is, if you breathe, if you eat, we are going to die one day. You're going to enter the healthcare market at some point if you die. That means if the court upholds this law, everybody can be regulated and be required to do things, whether it's buy a Chevy Volt, enter into a gym membership, or to eat broccoli. So it's a very compelling argument, and we think that we feel pretty good about it.
How much of this really is just politics? Because, you know, like you said in your own words, everybody eventually is going to need health care. How much of this do you feel like is just another political stance? Because folks who are for this plan say there's so many things that it does. You know, it works in the benefit of so many people, especially folks who have children who have pre-existing conditions. If this goes through, their kids can still have health care. If you're a college graduate and you don't have a job, which was a lot of people, you can stay on your parents' plan. How much of this is politics, and how much of this do the opponents have a backup plan for if this doesn't go through?
Well, politics is in the eye of the beholder. It's subjective, and anybody on both sides can say it's political. I choose to take the perspective that if you're for this health care lawsuit, I'm not going to impute a political motive or any motive to you, because everybody wants to help children. Everybody wants to help senior citizens, people who are poor. This is the analogy I use, and as Attorney General, I have to live and die by the Constitution and by the laws. Say my little boy Michael needs a heart transplant, or he's going to die. I don't have the money to pay for that heart transplant. So I go down the street and I commit armed robbery at the local convenience store to steal the money at gunpoint and then take my son down to the hospital to get the heart transplant. I don't think anybody in the world would say that my intention to save my son's life was a bad intention, and that it ultimately saved his life. That's a good thing. But that doesn't make the act of committing armed robbery any less illegal. Simply put, there are other ways that we can get the same changes enacted. And there are many parts of the Affordable Care Act that are good, and the intentions of the people that passed it, I don't impute any ill will or malice to it. I believe they intended well. But think about it. If you read the Constitution, Congress was given the power by the drafters to create money and then regulate it. It specifically says to coin money. Congress is given the power to raise an army, to provide for a navy, to create something, and then subsequently to regulate it. If you read the Commerce Clause, Congress is never given the power to create commerce and then regulate it. They were only given the power to regulate commerce. If Congress can create commerce by shoving you into it, then they can make you do anything, and that is wrong. That is unconstitutional. There are other ways. They could have passed this law, Darci, by simply taxing us. This law, we wouldn't even be here talking about this if they had done it under the tax power, but that would have been politically unpopular at the time.
Let me ask this question, because we're almost out of time. Is it possible to get the mandate part of Obamacare struck down so that it's not absolutely, you won't be penalized if you don't buy it, and then just have it as another option of health care? Or would that have to, we'd have to go back to the drawing board to redraw the entire thing if that happens?
That's actually a great question. We talked about the first day. The second day was the mandate. Yesterday was the severability argument and Medicaid expansion argument. Under the severability argument, basically it says if a part of the bill is unconstitutional, it can be severed out and thrown in the trash can and the rest of the bill stands. So if it's severable, then it's out. In the original bill, there was a severability clause that says if a part of this has got cancer in it, we can cut the tumor out and the rest of the bill is healthy. Congress took that out and then passed the final version without a severability clause. We made the argument that Congress intended for the mandate, and Justice Scalia even said, this is the heart of this bill. If the heart of the bill gets cut out, the bill dies. And so our argument is they intended to fund this. It is a necessary component to fund this massive expansion of the healthcare system, to have that mandate. So could the Supreme Court say we're going to carve out the bad part, which is the mandate, and allow the rest of it to stand? Absolutely. And they could send it back to Congress, and Congress could, do a quick patch on it, or they could strike down the whole law and send it back to Congress. The bottom line is, I do agree, we have a bad healthcare system. We need to fix it. It's a lot better than anywhere else in the country, but we have a lot of problems, and what you mentioned earlier, Darci, was absolutely correct. We need to address those issues, but I don't want to take us down a slippery slope. Justice Kennedy, who is known to be the swing vote, said something during the mandate argument. He says, if this court upholds this provision, upholds this law, it will change the relationship between the government and individuals in a fundamental way. That is something to think about.
Attorney General Alan Wilson, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure we'll see you guys again in June when we finally get a decision.
I hope by early summer. June is what I hope for.
Thank you.
All right, stay with us. More Friends at 5 when we come back.